until then, if you haven't already, you should be able to just open your camera and hover over if it doesn't work for you, because I know some people who have AT&T and some people who have a Droid are struggling with it. Just get the person next to you to do it on their phone. I set it up so that it can be multiple entries. And for those of you, we do have some who are quarantined who are having to join us virtually. We do have Mr. Brian Lamb here who's helping us in place of Mr. Michael Foy, but he will be going live on our YouTube.
You're not a student, you're a teacher.
Give me one for Angie. I ain't seen her song yet. Oh, is she? Wait about it. Yeah, Angie, way back there with socially distancing yourself today. I know that we're in a hot place right now, and so I just want to make sure that we are as safe as possible. Hopefully this virtual sign-in was not too difficult. If you did not get signed in, just tell the person next to you and maybe they'll be able to do it for you. You can sign each other in. Just don't sign in people who aren't here. Don't be like your students. So, all right, are we good to go as far as signing? Is there anybody else who has not? Okay. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to go over the operational guidelines for this year. There are some things that are similar to last year and some things that are a little different. But before you want to listen to me about how it's going to run, I figured we may want to talk with our school nurse, Miss Mary McGuffey. So she is going to talk to you about the quarantine guidelines as of today at 8 o'clock. So I'm going to pull up her slide deck and let her talk for you. She's waiting for that.
Good morning. Like Ms. McCann just said, these are changing quicker than I can keep up with them sometimes. So as of right now, this is how quarantine and isolation goes. Just so you guys have a heads up if you do get quarantined or if you do test positive, when you can come back. Okay, the people who are going to get quarantined, this is how you prevent getting quarantined, or this is how you know if you will get quarantined, if someone that you knew you were close to tests positive. So anyone within 6 feet of a positive or suspected COVID case for greater than 15 minutes in a 24-hour period is going to get quarantined, even if you have mask on. This goes for staff and students. We say suspected COVID case because if someone has the symptoms of COVID, but they refuse to go to the doctor or they refuse to be tested, then we have to treat them like they're a positive COVID case. So even someone who's just sick decides to stay home, doesn't want to go to the doctor, well, we may have to quarantine off of them depending on what their symptoms are. Anyone who has direct contact with a positive or suspected COVID case, that would be hugging, shaking hands. Riding in a vehicle is something that people don't think about. You're within 6 feet of that person for however long you're in the vehicle, and typically vehicles are small and there's just not enough space to spread out. And all of this includes 48 hours prior to the day that the person actually starts having symptoms or tests positive. So we have to go back 2 days. So even if you're sitting next to someone today, they're not sick, they have no symptoms, if they get sick tomorrow or the next day, we could quarantine you for being within 6 feet of them today. That's why it's important to social distance all the time, not just if you notice someone's having symptoms. Go ahead and be proactive so that you don't get quarantined 2 days later. And then all students and staff from a classroom setting with a positive or suspected COVID case that cannot maintain social distancing. That would be our preschool and Head Start. They don't sit at desks. Those kids don't understand how to stay 6 feet apart 100% of the time. So if we get a positive in any of those classrooms, that means the whole class has to go home. And the little ones can't come back for 14 days because they can't social distance when they get back for that extra amount of time if they came back early. The exceptions to the quarantine rules, the state says that fully vaccinated close contacts who do not have symptoms do not have to quarantine. If they were to come after being exposed and begin to have symptoms, then they would have to go home and see a doctor and be tested to be able to return, but as long as they don't have symptoms, they don't have to quarantine. Any individual who has already tested positive for COVID in the last 90 days and does not have symptoms does not have to quarantine. So if you're sick at this time of the school year at the beginning, you have 90 days where you will not have to quarantine even if you're re-exposed later in the school year. And then students who sit greater than 3 feet apart, if both the infected individual and the close contact, so both students were wearing masks and they were in a classroom setting, then we don't have to quarantine this year. That's going to cut back on some of our classroom quarantines. We know we can't get the desks all 6 feet apart, but we can typically get them 3 feet apart, so that'll keep us from having a quarantine inside the classroom. That does not go for staff. The state says this is only an option for students and only in the classroom setting. We can't count it on the buses, in the cafeteria, anywhere else, only a classroom. So a fully vaccinated close contact that's not required to quarantine if they're asymptomatic. As I said before, they don't have to quarantine at all unless they have symptoms. Once they have symptoms, then they become isolated, and we'll discuss how long that is later. Unvaccinated staff and students that have to quarantine, you have to go home immediately. Once we find out that you're a close contact with someone who's tested positive, you'll be asked to leave. You have options to come back early if you don't have any symptoms. The first option, you can return on the 8th day after exposure if you get a negative test on day 5, 6, or 7. You can't get a test earlier than that and count it. It has to be closer to you coming back, so day 5, 6, or 7. Or you can return on the 11th day following exposure if you choose not to be tested, as long as you don't have any symptoms. Then for the ones like the littles who are in the preschool and Head Start classes, they have to stay out a full 14 days. Even if they're asymptomatic, they don't have to get tested to come back, but they can't maintain social distance in their classrooms. So that's why they have to stay out 14 days. If you do use the options to return early, you still have to maintain social distancing. Be sure that you're wearing a mask and you're not exposing people, because you could still get sick up to 14 days later. So if you come back on the 8th day, you still have up to 14 days that you could potentially get sick and expose other people. If you are a close contact and the person that is sick is your spouse, your children, your parents, someone that you're living with or you're going to have to care for, you cannot start your quarantine until that person is recovered. Because every day that you're exposed to them, you're getting, re-exposed. So we can't start the quarantine until your last day of exposure. The state does allow for isolation in the home, but they require that the person have their own bathroom, their own bedroom, they not use any of the common areas, no kitchen, no living room. You have to take their stuff to their bedroom door with it shut, leave it there, walk away. They open the door, pick up their stuff, and go back in their bedroom. You can't use the same bathroom and clean it behind each other. The state won't accept that as isolation because they say that it could be missed and you could be infected by surfaces. So if the close contact is re-exposed, say you're exposed to someone at home, you isolate from them, something happens and they get worse. You have to take them to the doctor, so therefore you have to ride in the car together. Your quarantine starts over because you rode in the car with them, so you were re-exposed. And then if any COVID-related symptoms come up during your quarantine, the options for the early return are gone. You have to quarantine for 14 days. If you quarantine, you choose to be tested on the 7th day and return on the 8th. You can get a negative test on the 7th day, start having symptoms on the 8th day, go back and get another negative test, but you still cannot return until the 14th day. And this was one that we questioned, so we actually asked the epidemiologist yesterday, and she confirmed that is the case. Even you can get all the negative tests you want, but if you have any symptoms, you can't return until the 14th day. Then if no testing is done and you have symptoms while you're in quarantine, you have to stay out the full 14 days or 10 days after your symptoms start, whichever is longer. So if you're quarantined on day 7, you start having symptoms, you have to start counting 10 days beginning on the 8th day. Unless you go to the doctor and get a negative test, then you could return on the 14th day. The epidemiologist also wanted to let us know that they are strongly recommending anyone who is a close contact be tested immediately upon discovering that you're a close contact, and then again in 5 to 7 days after exposure. This is how they're catching some people who are sick earlier so that more people aren't getting exposed. And then also, if you go ahead and get tested and you end up testing positive, you can start counting your 10 days then versus waiting 7 days, then getting a positive test and having to stay out 10 more days. Fully vaccinated individuals who don't quarantine and the unvaccinated individuals who return with the shortened. We talked about they should maintain the social distancing, wear your mask, wash your hands, just be on high alert for at least that 14 days to be sure that you're not going to spread it if you do end up getting sick. So isolation. If you get sick and test positive, you have to return, you stay out for 10 days. So you don't have to get a negative test to return. You just have to be out for 10 full days with no fever, nausea, or vomiting for 24 hours prior to the 10th day. As long as your symptoms are improved the 10th day, regardless of what you're testing at that point. If you're hospitalized though, or it becomes more serious, then you have to have a doctor's note to return. The doctor will have to decide. They say that hospitalized people may be contagious longer if they have a more serious case. So a doctor would have to clear you to come back in that situation. If you are sent home from school sick with symptoms, your options to come back, you have to see a doctor. The doctor can either test you for COVID and you can get a negative test and then come back when you're 24-hour symptom free, so no fever, nausea, vomiting for 24 hours, or the doctor can choose not to test you and diagnose you with a more likely alternate diagnosis. So if they decide you don't have COVID, this doesn't look like COVID to me, you have strep throat, then you can get that doctor's note with a return date saying that you had strep throat or stomach virus or dehydration, and you can come back when you're 24 hours symptom free without a negative COVID test. Are there any questions? It's really confusing, and I've been doing this for a year and still ask lots of questions, so yes.
I didn't realize that nausea and vomiting and diarrhea were typical symptoms from last go round. Can you give us a list of the current symptoms that we would be looking for?
Everything. So last year we saw a lot of the loss of taste and smell, the cough. We actually saw a lot of nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea last year. Fever. This year I've seen almost 100% sinus symptoms. Runny nose, bad headaches, cough, congestion. A lot of people think it's allergies. I've had men tell me, well, I've been in the field, I've been mowing the grass, I thought I had allergies, and it ended up being COVID. Not everyone runs fever, so don't assume if you don't have fever, you don't have COVID. It's just an array of symptoms, really, and it's different all the time. Any other questions? I know it's confusing, and sometimes I count 2 and 3 times to make sure I get the right return dates for people. So if you do have someone that gets COVID outside of the school system and you need to know when you can come back, just call me and let me know. We'll talk about it. If you get exposed at school, I'll always contact you and follow up and make sure that you have the right return date. It just might take me a couple days, but just know you'll be out at least a little while, so I'll get to you before it's time to come back.
So you're clapping for Mary, but not for the presentation, right? My clicker's not working. Kim, can you come swap, or will you come either one? So a lot of times, we get calls or, you know, can I do this? What do I do this? And so generally what I'll do is take a screenshot and send it to the nurses to run it through them, because it is confusing. And so we're very thankful for our school nurses who are just like all of you, adding on so many other responsibilities on top of your normal job. And so I wanted her to go over that information with us so that now we can get into what school's going to look like this year. And of course, when we wrote this plan, it was before the mask mandate, and so we were really excited about the direction that we were going. And now we have a little hiccup. The other day, someone, a teacher, I think it was Mr. Massel, put it into perfect words. He's like, you know, we're running a marathon, and that's what our job is we're teaching and we're doing all the things that we know is part of this race, and now we have a little rock in our shoe. And it's hard to stay focused on what we're supposed to be doing because that little rock or that mask mandate is in our way. But we'll get through. So our operations plan, which is subject to change as the guidelines change, is as follows. That's just board members. There are board members. Also though. All right, so school planning for COVID. Just know that we expect to have COVID. I mean, it's here. I know I talked with Mary the other day, and she has dealt with more COVID before school starting this year than she did last year. So we're in a very peak right now of cases. We should expect that there will be students and staff who expose others. Our job is just to try to keep maintaining that social distance. And of course, individuals who are in close contact, 6 feet, more than 15 minutes may be identified and have to quarantine for 14 days. Okay, close contacts who were previously diagnosed for 90 days, you're off the hook and don't have to quarantine. And then, of course, fully vaccinated employees or students do not have to quarantine unless they develop symptoms. So use of sick days, this is a big change from last year because last year we had those COVID days that the government mandated. Keep in mind that they did not give us the money to fund those COVID days, and so it really was what we call an unfunded mandate. But for the 21-22 school year, the school board voted to return to our regular sick leave policy. And so school employees who are required to isolate or quarantine due to exposure will be required to use their personal sick days. Now, one thing is that if you're vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine unless you become symptomatic. And then for those of you who choose not to vaccinate, just know that your lifeline here is going to be that social distance. If you maintain your 6 feet from everyone and you wear your mask along with that 6 feet, then you are less likely to have to be identified as a close contact. So the choice to vaccinate is totally up to you. Just know that this is what it's going to look like. And so we are hoping to see less teachers out. We know that we're probably going through a surge now, and so we may. But at this time, which I said this could change as things evolve, but at this time we are reverting back to our regular sick leave policy. All right, so overall guidelines, protective measures that we have in place that are very similar to last year: social distancing, maintaining small groups of individuals as much as possible, monitoring students and staff for symptoms of fever, cough, shortness of breath, or sore throat, and then practicing frequent environmental cleaning and hand washing. All of that proved to be very worthwhile last year, and so I think that we did a good job. We'll just continue those practices this year. So guidelines for closing school, that decision will be made by me in consultation with our board members and our health professionals at Louisiana Department of Health. And so factors that will be considered in closing a school or classroom is really based on those expert opinions and what we should do for those particular times. All right, so social distancing measures. Again, we encourage you to remove unused desks and furniture in classrooms so that you can maximize the physical distance. Like Mary said, it will be easier for the 3 feet than it was the 6 feet. So as you are setting your classrooms up, just sit in the different places to see if you can maintain that 3 feet distance. Establish distance between your desk and the students' desks. Identify and utilize large spaces whenever you can. And then maintain social distancing guidelines. Try to teach from a place that's 6 feet away from the students. And then always be sure, it doesn't say here, but that you have your mask on as you're moving around to your students. I know last year you kind of felt like you couldn't do group work and your kids were so isolated in their own desks at their own Chromebooks. And we really hope to move past that. And I'm not saying you can't do that. Just be mindful of the distance and the amount of time that they're spending, together. You can, of course, work with your kids. Just be mindful of the time, and definitely with those masks on. I know that the masks are not the way we wanted to come back to school, but it does offer us a little bit of relief in that if you're masked up and you're 3 feet apart, you don't necessarily have to quarantine as far as students goes. All right, so transitions, we will continue to add additional time for transitions. Designate areas of the hallway. I know last year some really effective strategies were to have the flow of traffic moving in one way. I know up certain stairwells were up and certain stairwells were down. We'll continue to do that. Minimize the congregation of students. We were able to use some of our COVID money to install security cameras in every school. And one of the reasons we could do that is because they have heat sensors on there. And so you can tell when there's an area that's very congregated, and it will send an alarm to the administrators to let them know we need to disperse this area. So it does have that heat sensing. Another cool thing is that you can do facial recognition, and so it will help us with contact tracing. So if you have a positive case, you can search for that face to see who all that person was in contact with. So hopefully some of those technologies will help us in this process as well. Third bullet, plan staggered class changes. And so your principals have thought long and hard about what worked last year and what they want to continue for this year. But the objective is to decrease the number of students in the hallways at one time. And so that might be staggered recess or bathroom breaks. So student drop-off and pickup procedures or processes. Students should exit and enter in single file lines at designated entry points so that the flow of traffic can go in the same direction. We will continue to limit visitors in the school building, except under extenuating circumstances, especially during our high traffic times like drop-off and pickup. And I know that that was a big deal last year for our parents of little ones. But it really helps to not have everybody congregated in the office or in the foyer area at drop-off times and pickups. And so we'll continue what we did last year, where we drop the kids off at the door and then they go on to their classes or follow whatever schedule y'all have there. Visitors will be allowed for scheduled meetings. So like if we need parents to come in for IEP meetings, or parent conferences, or even when we wrote this, of course we weren't in a surge, we talked about, you know, open houses, and I know that we've had those, and hopefully those have been pretty successful. But we don't want to say nobody can come in. We just really want to be mindful of those times when there's lots of traffic so that we're minimizing the exposure. We'll continue with our hand hygiene stations, so lots of hand washing and lots of hand sanitizer. Encourage families to drive their children to school if possible so that we reduce the number of students on buses. I'm sure Mary can attest that a lot of times buses are a thorn in her side when it comes to quarantining, and it's very important, bus drivers, that you have a seating chart and that you follow that seating chart, because I remember several circumstances last year where we had to quarantine the majority of the bus or the whole bus because we could not delineate who was a close contact or not. So please have those seating charts and stick with them. That's our everyday buses and our athletic buses and our cheer and our dance and our band. Just make sure that the students have assigned seats and that they stay where they're supposed to. Otherwise, we're going to knock the whole team off. All right, so large gatherings and extracurricular activities. Attendees are encouraged to maintain appropriate physical distancing. Thank you very much. All unvaccinated attendees are encouraged to wear a face mask. Of course, we highlighted in yellow because this was written before the mask mandate. Until September 1st, at this time, everyone wears a mask. Students and teachers are encouraged to wash hands before and after. Field trips can occur. That's a new one. Last year, I know we didn't do any field trips, but we're going to go back and try to reinstitute those field trips. We still have to follow the transportation requirements, which is wearing masks. And then outdoor field trips should be prioritized. And that's just something to think about. Anytime you can get outside, that's something different this year, because last year when you were outside you had to wear a mask. Now if you're outside you don't. That's as of 8/25 today, you don't. But I recommend, you know, at least if you can teach outside, go teach outside. If you can, whatever you can do outside, I would do, because it's going to give you the break and the kids the break from the masks. And then outside visitors will only be allowed for scheduled meetings and official school events. All right, so athletics, band, and vocal music. Thank goodness we're not where we were last year. But athletic activities will follow the guidelines from LHSAA. Outdoor and indoor spectator capacity has been set forth by the fire marshal, and to my knowledge, there's nothing as far as football, as far as who can or how many people you can have. Of course, it's outside, so that's a good thing. But band and vocal and music, we will share this slide deck with you. I'm sure you have access to this, but that way you have those links to help keep you and your students safe. All right, so symptom monitoring. This year, symptoms are monitored at home, so you no longer have to do that. I see this back here. You can see your So what we're asking is that parents monitor the fever. Individuals who have a fever of 100.4 and above, is that still there? Okay. Should not be admitted. If you suspect a child is, then of course you will, ask for a temperature to be taken, or you keep an eye on those symptoms, but you're not required to document it every day. So students and staff should not come to school and notify school officials if they become sick with COVID-19 symptoms, if they test positive, or have been exposed to someone with COVID. Students should not come to school if the fever is reduced by taking fever-reducing medication within the last 24 hours. The exception to this is Kelly Early Childhood Center, who has to follow a different set of guidelines because of their licensing, and so I know that they're taking care of this on their side of it. So what if a student becomes sick at school? Same as last year, we'll create an area with proper adult supervision that can be used to isolate a sick student. Then we'll clean and disinfect that area when they've gone home. In the event that a student, staff member, or visitor is presumed to be a positive case, the school nurses will be contacted, and then the school nurses will follow their guidance when making decisions about how long to isolate and quarantine and when they can return. We will make sure that we continue to let parents know that you're responsible for picking up your kids, sick kids on campus. So occasionally that doesn't work out and we have to take them home, but it is the parent's responsibility to do that. So environmental cleaning and personal hygiene. Masks, bright yellow, are required right now. Those who've been vaccinated or feel more comfortable, this was basically written before the mask mandate. So if it goes away, this is what we'll follow. We're never going to say you can't wear a mask. If you are more comfortable wearing a mask after the mask mandate is lifted, we encourage you to. We went through summer camp and there were plenty of people who wore them and nobody made fun of them or said anything. I mean, it's just your personal preference as long as there's not a mandate. And then of course the third bullet, even after the mask mandate is lifted, the transportation is 100%, and that's a presidential order because it is public transportation. School buses fall there, so all bus drivers and riders must have a mask on while riding on the school bus. Hygiene. Students and teachers have scheduled hand washing. Just be sure that you're doing this frequently. Teachers should wash their hands or use sanitizer every time a new group enters. I mean, I just try to get into the habit of constantly using it to help decrease the spread. Signs should be posted in highly visible locations that promote those protective measures. Intensify cleaning and disinfecting. Basically the same as last year, except for now the recommendation is only twice a day. So, this is for custodians and maintenance, light switches, doors, benches, banisters, and bathroom fixtures, surfaces and objects in libraries, lab settings where there's lots of hands-on materials, student desks, which should be cleaned before and after use. Do be aware that some students have allergies, and so I know sometimes we have them clean, but it may not be appropriate for all students. And then continue to minimize sharing of materials between students. And then with playground and athletic equipment, those are just depending on the frequency of use. So they decreased the amounts a little bit. Just be aware, especially of those high-touch surfaces. So shared spaces, limit the use of indoor shared spaces, such as cafeterias and gyms to maximum group sizes. Ensure physical distance and clean between uses. Close shared water fountains. So What we have talked about is maybe trying to use water fountains just for like refilling bottles or refilling cups, encouraging them to bring their water bottles to school that are unopened until they get here. But we definitely don't want our kids' mouth on the water fountains at this time. All right, so child nutrition program. Breakfast, the cafeteria or classrooms can be used for eating breakfast. Each school will decide on what model works best, and so your principals will go over with you what you're going to do at your school as far as breakfast goes. But it's my understanding that everyone will be going through the cafeteria line, and so no more rosters, right? Okay. No more rosters. They'll be going through the cafeteria line and registering their meal pickup individually. Lunch will be served in the cafeteria. Individual schools can make decisions about using to-go containers and taking food to other locations for consumption. Again, your principal will tell you what is going to work best for your school. All right. All students will come through the line again and in the cafeteria to receive their meals. Transportation. Presidential executive order says that we can operate at 100% capacity. All passengers must wear masks. Use hand sanitizer when entering the bus. Windows should be kept open as much as possible. And seating charts should be created and consistently enforced. I can't highlight that enough, how important it is for us to maintain those seating charts so that we know who to contact trace. And then buses should be cleaned at least once a day. All right, academics. So we are one-to-one with Chromebooks and students at this time. In the event that a student is quarantined due to exposure and a reliable internet access is not available, the parent can contact the school to check out a MiFi device. We do have limited. Unfortunately, what we find is that in Caldwell Parish, there's places that you just can't get good internet service. And so we have AT&T ones and Verizon ones that if they need, they can call and check out. All students are expected to return to in-person classes. This is a big difference from last year. Last year, we didn't really know what we were getting into, and we tried the whole virtual and in-person, and so our expectation is that everyone is in school. The leak test results and everything that we have processed since last year says that students do better when they are in person, face-to-face with their teachers. Virtual learning will only be offered for a limited number of circumstances, and those considerations are medical or an IEP decision. I'll say that at this time we have probably less than 10 in the whole district who are completely virtual, and those are doctor's orders. We did have an application process for that, and had a team that reviewed the information as well as the doctor's orders before making those decisions, and those were due in July. Unfortunately, you are going to have kids who are quarantined, and so that doesn't mean that we are totally off the hook for virtual learning, but only students who have tested positive for COVID or been quarantined as a close contact through the school nurse will be eligible for day-to-day, day-by-day virtual learning. In the event of a medical quarantine, students are expected to log in each class period and participate in the classroom discussion and lesson, as well as complete assignments by the original due dates. I heard that over and over again about students turning in their work way later than they're supposed to. So here it is, it's by the original due dates. Student Chromebooks can be checked out through the office, and MiFis can be checked out. Students who do not comply with these expectations will not receive credit for their assignments. Teacher expectations for posting virtual lessons. This only applies when a student has been medically quarantined. So gone are the days of I'm just going to be virtual today. I heard a little laughter. Did y'all have any kids like that last year? Okay. So the only ones who are allowed to participate are those who have been medically quarantined. This is not open window for anyone to stay home and do their lessons. But so your expectations, we know that it is extra work, and so we're trying to listen and be as flexible as possible. But we're just asking that you post your lessons or expectations in your Google Classroom. You post your lesson assignments for virtual students by 8 a.m. That way, if they're home and they are quarantined, they can go ahead and get started. You can record and post a video of the lesson to Google Classroom, just one video for each content area. You may want to go live. You may want to do it synchronously. We had this conversation the other day with the teachers who have virtual students. Find what works best for you, but do something. Don't leave them hanging and go 3 to 4 days with nothing. So you may want to go live. You may want to post a video, your best, hour class period that you can get on there. Just be sure that we're keeping them up, because if you think like a parent and your student gets quarantined and they're taking chemistry or they're taking 8th grade math, you don't want them to be out for 2 whole weeks. You want them to stay up on their lessons. So whatever works best for you, just be sure that you are doing something and that there's work and that there's interaction, and that if you're not doing live, you are checking in with those students. As for any student, please grade the lessons in a timely manner, and then if they have any questions, respond within 1 day. I know that it gets busy, but make sure that we're not leaving parents' emails and telephone calls unreturned. All right, student attendance. We are back to our original policy. So here it is for you. Attendance is set forth by our policy. It's outlined in student handbooks, and they must meet the minimum attendance requirements, especially in high school, to receive Carnegie credit. For the 21-22 school year, let's see, we go back here to elementary. Shall miss no more than 10 days during the instructional year to be promotable. And over for high school, they may not miss more than 4 days in a semester. If you have students who are not coming to school, let your principal know, and principals get with Miss Gillette, who's in the back. She will track down these students for us. We want these kids in school, and we want them there as much as possible. So we are reverting back to our attendance requirements pre-COVID. Written excuses, same policy that we have always followed. If a student, in order for them to be eligible to receive credit or make up work, they have to bring in an excuse. If a student is tardy or absent, a parent may submit a written excuse and submit it to the office, stating the reasons. And originals, doctors, dentists, or nurse practitioners' written statement for the absence must be returned within 3 days, or what does that say? 3 consecutive days due to illness. And all excuses must be presented within 3 days. And it is the responsibility of the parent to see that the excuses are turned in on time. All right. Any questions? All right. We covered it all. Okay, so next on the agenda is Mr. John Geis, and he is scheduled to be here around 9 o'clock, so it looks like we have about 20 minutes. Don't hoard up in the bathrooms, but if you want to use this time to kind of go back and forth and do, we'll announce. I have this up here too. This is what he's going to go over with us, so you can scan and open this document as well. If he gets here earlier, we'll bring you all back so that we can move on through.
Where did Binkley sit at? He looked like he was in the back. It looked like Abby was with us too. Back row Baptist.
It legit was 10 minutes after they left my house. I was like, "They keep coming out of here." I'm like, dude.
not made me mad she's pregnant. I'm just mad that it was so easy for her. That's the thing. Like she but she gets the baby, but I in May. When were they supposed to get married? That's how I feel about them people. It made me want to throw up. Do you know how much money I spend every month, like, to go, to get an ultrasound?
So I know that your agenda says we're going to start at 9:10, but since Mr. Geis is here, we will start at 9 o'clock. You've got about 5 minutes.
So I pay $110 every month to get an ultrasound, and then I have to pay $35 for blood work, and then the medicine, and because I'm medically diagnosed as undiagnosed, unknown infertility. But like it's all
do a thing defensive. No, that was, you can do the QR code on there. Right, I did that.
All right, I have 9 o'clock, so please make your way to your seats. Shall I do a countdown?
I see you found some clothes.
I did, but I didn't find a timer to get up.
You wasn't that late.
Just a little bit. Just a tiny bit.
Good morning. See if I can make this get a little closer to me. Good morning. For those of you that haven't had to suffer through me previously, my name is John Geis. I'm attorney at Monroe and have the pleasure of representing about 60 school boards. And you're probably about the 10th one that I've had the pleasure of visiting with in the last 2 weeks. It's like everybody wants to hear about some of the new laws and some of the new things that are going on. But I've got to share some crazy COVID stuff with you though. I was in Bossier last week at a school board meeting and they were handing out masks to those that didn't have them. And a lady comes in, yep, I guess she was a female. She came in and we offered her a mask and she says, there are chemicals in those masks and I don't wear them. We said, well ma'am, you have to wear a mask to come in. She stepped to the side, pulled her skirt up, pulled her panties down, stepped one leg out of the mouth, and put them over her ears. If you don't believe me, I got the surveillance video. And it was a red thong. She didn't want to wear those chemicals. If there had been flies in the room, they would have filled the mouth of everybody around. I mean, it was bizarre, and she wore them the whole time. Anyway, there may be a marketing opportunity out there for you that are thinking about it. Yep, it's crazy. And yet, they want us to have intelligent conversations with them about their children, you know, and things of that sort. But look, since, I don't know if we've had an opportunity to visit. I think I visited over the internet with some of you last year, but our entire family was stricken by COVID. I was in the hospital 6 days. Last Easter Sunday, the ambulance came to the house. I had the feeling as though my head was being held underwater. I was smothering, and I was scared. I was running around just trying to breathe, and it made it worse, and the ambulance actually had to restrain me. And the darn air conditioner was broken in the ambulance, and I kept telling them I was going to kick their blankety blank blank when I got to the hospital, because they had me double masked with a cloth and an N95, and I couldn't breathe to begin with, and that was the most horrible ride. And then when they left my house, I knew they turned the wrong way, and I was telling them, "Where in the hell are you going? You going the wrong way?" And so anyway, it was bad. The next 6 days, I was in a room in isolation. And when I tell you isolation, I mean isolation. There was a hole about that big in the wall that they were sucking the air out so hard that, like any piece of paper, like they had a piece of surveyor tape in there, it was sucking it out the hole. It was called a negative pressure room because they didn't want the virus out in the hospital. They would knock on my door, and there'd be a Walmart bag hung on the doorknob. On the outside, I'd have to reach around and get it, and that would be my meal. And there was no changing of bed linens. I had adult diapers because of some of the effects of the COVID. There was no sheet change. There was no floor mopping. There was nothing. Once a day, a person would come in a beekeeper suit. That's what I call it. And the gentleman was not from the States, and English was his third language. And literally, I would call on my cell phone my family physician, and about 30 minutes after he left, and said, "Will you please access my chart and tell me how I'm doing?" Because I couldn't understand. It was tough. John Galat's brother was the pulmonologist at that hospital. And I was thankful for my relationship with him because he got his brother, and he would come in there once a day or once every other day and sit down and tell me what was going on. I was on supplemental oxygen. My pregnant daughter had it, and for those of you that are grandparents and parents, you know, if you can imagine having someone that's pregnant and you're already worried about, they're going to, how's the baby, but to know that they've got COVID, that's bad. My wife and daughter had it. My wife should have been at the hospital. Had I been at home and not in the hospital, I would have sent her to the hospital. She was that bad off. My father-in-law died with it. We went to North Carolina where he was. We purchased an iPad and gave it to him. And we'd FaceTime with him. But eventually the calls got shorter, and eventually he didn't answer. And so he died alone. So yeah, I get emotional about it, and I get PO'd when someone tells me that this is a political deal, or this is just something fake. I mean, when you lay it in the hospital wondering if you're going to make it, and then your pregnant daughter has it, and your father-in-law dies, you know it's real. So that brings us to the governor's mandate. Many of us didn't vote for the governor. Many of us don't agree with what the governor does. But here's what the law says. The law says that when the governor in Louisiana passes a proclamation, it has the force and effect of law. So we may not agree with it. We may say we shouldn't follow it. But the reality is, it is the law. And your board members take an oath of office as a board member. Your superintendent takes an oath to follow the law. Imagine a school setting where parents send their kids to school and you give the rules to the students, and then you allow the students to say, "Well, I don't agree with that rule. I'm not going to follow that rule." Or, "I'm not going to follow that rule." It just wouldn't work. We are a society of laws, and we have to follow the law. Now, the mask mandate expires on September the 1st. What we're asking people to do is to wear their mask for 14, 16 days. Whether the mask works or not, I don't know. If someone told me wearing a pine cone on the end of my nose would keep me out of the hospital again, I'd be out there looking for the biggest cone because it'd take me. I'd be looking for the biggest cone I could put over my nose. And so, wearing a mask is not something you do for yourself, but it's something you do to protect others. And I kind of think of it as we're all being double masked. You're masked, I'm masked. And does it help? Again, we don't know. The science is subject to dispute. Is it comfortable to wear a mask? Heck no. I hate to go into things. I can tell you from personal experience and no BS, it sure as the hell beats the alternative. And so I hope that we will all put our personal opinions aside, realize that this is a serious situation. Folks, we had over 16,000 new cases last year. And here's the other thing. Last year, we were told that COVID-19 does not attack kids. That it's the adults and the elderly and the weak and the compromised that are subject to the attack. We turned cartwheels, backflips, somersaults, though, complying with all the mandates, even though we were told the kids weren't targeted. But this year we're told Delta attacks kids. And so we're saying, well, we don't want to do anything this year. I mean, I personally don't need a governor's mandate to tell me what the right Christian thing to do is. And so anyway, I'm biased, and I want to tell you that, and I think it's obvious. But you wouldn't pull off your belt at school and whip a kid, and you may think of it. You may think that I need to pull my belt off and whip that butt. You don't do that because we have rules against it. And you are objective. And I objectively look at the law. Our firm is 26 members. I think I'm one of the few that had the COVID. And we've all looked at it. We're members of our state and national attorneys organization. And every attorney who gives legal advice objectively has to tell you to follow the mandate in addition to it being the right thing. There were 4 laws passed last year, and they said that if you follow the guidelines and the regulations, none of us can be sued if one of our kids becomes ill or ultimately passes away. And so we have a large carrot dangled out there in front of us. Statistically, though, if you look at Arkansas and Mississippi where they're not wearing masks, the number of cases have shut schools down over there. The Arkansas governor is a Republican. He signed a law that said schools cannot force a kid to wear a mask. He signed that in June. He was on the news last week apologizing to people, saying that he had made the wrong decision, and they're trying to reconvene the legislature to reverse that. I think in one school they had like 731 cases. Mississippi is the same way. They started out in school with no mask mandate, and they quickly reversed course. So anyway, one final thing on the mask. The Department of Education and the Department of Health have told us this. If everyone in your school wears a mask and you have a positive case, then if the kids were at least 3 feet apart, those kids will not have to quarantine this year. Do you realize how significant that is and how many more kids will be kept in school if we do that? That is a game changer. Anyway, that's my COVID spiel, and I promise I won't preach anymore. All right? All right, so I've got this little deal that we're going to follow, and you know me, I'm not going to read to you, but I want to start by telling you all are important. I don't care if you are a custodian, the superintendent, a principal, assistant principal, a food service worker, a bus driver, or a bus operator, I should say. You're all professional folks, and our school wouldn't work without you. I remember all of my teachers. I think part of that was because I was raised by educators. I was taught to respect them. I knew a lady named Ethel Humphreys that was my elementary custodian. If we fell and got our pants muddy, she always had an extra pair and would wash yours while you were wearing those other ones. And Reverend Powell, our middle school and high school principal, would get there early in the mornings and would make sure that the school was warm. You know, our school wasn't cool because we didn't have an air conditioner. So when you're in Catahoula Parish, you can relate to Caldwell, I can assure you. But all employees, my grandfather was a bus driver. Everybody in the school district is essential and you're important. But you're also role models. And if you don't believe that, go to some graduations or award ceremonies. You know, sometimes you'll hear a kid say, I want to thank my parents. But usually you hear a kid saying, I want to thank Coach so-and-so. I want to thank Mrs. so-and-so. Because those people kept those kids in school. And usually when you hear those kids, we're not talking about the valedictorian and salutatorian. We're talking about kids that would not have made it through were it not for a kind hand or a kind word of encouragement. So you're a role model. But I was talking to a guy that I've known for a while and know that he has battled a nicotine addiction for quite a while. And his addiction was the Skoal, the canned snuff. But he quit cold turkey. And I said, how'd you do it? He said, well, I didn't. My grandson did it for me. He said he came out of the kitchen one day, and he's 3, and he had a styrofoam cup, and he was stuffing a paper towel in it to spit in his cup like Papa. He said, I realized at that point I had a problem. And we all need to sit back and think about it. We're all role models to these kids. They're going to emulate what you do. It's just amazing. I have a daughter now at Louisiana Tech in elementary education, and there was a particular teacher that motivated her and influenced her, and that's why she made her career decision. She still finally speaks of Miss Lehigh all the time. And so we are role models, and we can't forget that. All of us either have contracts or job descriptions or something like that. We need to be mindful and kind of review those and look at your job description. You know, we'll have a much better year this year if everyone understands their expectations. When I talk with principals, I remind them that at our parent-teacher, we'll talk about that in a second, but at the beginning faculty meetings, the principals ought to set the expectations for their employees. That'll be told, you know, here's what we're going to do as far as duty, and here's how we're going to handle it this year. Here's what my expectations for arrival times and departure times. You know, we all know we've done this before, but it's good to go over those things again and set those expectations. Good judgment. I want to talk about that for a second. You know, good judgment is like your car keys. You know, you get dressed to come to work and you grab your car keys and there's your umbrella over there. Sometimes you forget it. And the same thing happens with our good judgment. Sometimes we leave it at home. I got a call, let's see what day it was. It was last Friday from a superintendent that said, look, I'm going to send you something. You won't believe this. And so he sent me a picture of one of his teachers, and she had a Michelob Ultra banner behind her. She was wearing a Michelob Ultra shirt, no underwear, no bra, and certain things were pierced, and she had her hands up behind her head and big hairy armpits, and she had posted that on Facebook, and all the kids at the high school had it. And folks, there's a common misconception out there that what you do at work is the employer's time and what you do at home is your time. Not in a school setting for school employees. The things you do at home on your own time, which have a negative impact at school, can cause you a job problem. Because if parents start calling and saying, I don't want my kids in that classroom, or that teacher is saying things on Facebook and they can't be fair to my child, then that becomes our problem with the school board. Let me give you a prime example. We had a teacher last year that posted on Facebook. You know, the problem with education is that the kids that want to learn can't learn. We have those retarded kids in our class, and they hold us back. Now, that lady is not teaching in that parish anymore. But think of yourself. If you're the parent of a special needs child and you read that on someone's Facebook page, do you think that teacher is going to be compassionate? Do you think that teacher is going to treat your child fairly? Do you think that teacher is going to have the same open mind with your child as they do with the other 19 kids in that class? I don't believe so. We can change that and make it a disability. We can make that a race. We can make that a social economic status, like those hillbilly rednecks. They don't have a sense. We can change it to anything. But what I want you to take away from this is, be careful about what you post, because you're supposed to treat all of your kids equally and share with them the same desire that they learn and the same compassion. And if you make statements that call into question your fitness to be a teacher, you're not going to take any protection by the fact that it was on my own time and it was on Facebook. The same thing with the nudity and the sex topics and things of that sort. And just because you may have it marked private Miss Michelot had hers on private, and someone did a screenshot of it and sent it out. I jokingly told the superintendent all he needed to do was send that to Michelot, and they'd send her a cease and desist letter. I said, I don't drink beer, but I guarantee if I did, I wouldn't reach for a Michelob. Man. Child abuse reporting, let's talk about that for a second. You know, if your test scores tank, if you're late coming to school every day, if you don't get to your duty post on time, none of that's going to get you in jail. But as a mandatory child abuse reporter, if you fail to make a necessary report, your butt will go to jail. And it may be years and years after the fact. Something that you fail to report today could land you at the correctional center 2 years from now. I'll give you an example of that. Young lady comes in, she tells her counselor in April, my dad is beating, and he's beating my mama, but I've got a plan. I've hit my target on the ACT, I'm going to college, I want you to help me with my financial aid information. Probably what she would say is help me with FAFSA. But anyway, I'm getting out of here and I'm not coming back. I don't want you to tell anybody, it'll only get worse at home. I am okay. I know how to avoid it. I know what he's drinking. I know when to stay away. So the report's not made. 2 years later, the dad beats the mother an inch of her life, and she's in the hospital. And the girl comes home from college, and she's by her bedside when the hospital social worker comes in. And the social worker's talking to her about battered women's facilities and the fact that her husband's in jail and that they'll have to give her notice when he bails out and all that stuff. And then the counselor or social worker looks at the student and says, baby, how long has this been going on? For years. And you never told anybody? Well, just my school counselor. 2 years later, the counselor's arrested. So this is a very serious issue here. And there's been some changes, and the courts and the district attorneys are looking at this in an entirely different light than they used to. Previously, we would say this: if you're a teacher and you see it, or you have knowledge of it, you report it to the principal, and then you're okay. We no longer give that advice. The district attorneys, the attorney general, the Department of Education are saying that whoever who acquires the knowledge is a mandatory reporter, and they must make the report. So there may be a situation where you go to your principal, but you're still on the hook, and we will work with you in making the necessary report. Because if you make that report, and heaven forbid you were wrong, the kid was fibbing to you when he told you what happened, then you are entitled to immunity as long as you made a good, faithful report. As long as you had some basis for saying it, you have immunity. So there's all the reason to report it, and you're in serious trouble if you don't. Just last week, I've got a paraprofessional arrested and a teacher and a para under investigation right now for something that occurred in summer school. A para comes forward with a video she made in the classroom. She videoed another para. So let me back up. This is summer school in a big parish. They have 2 paras and a teacher in the room because it's a special needs classroom. And so one para films the other one taking a ruler and just tapping that kid upside the head. A nonverbal kid who she knew couldn't go home and tell mom and dad what had happened. And so the lady comes forward with it, and that video had a stamp on it that said June 26th. And here we are in 1st of August. And so they arrested the para that did the slapping with the ruler. Then they started their investigation. And they said, well, look, ma'am, why did you wait so long to come forward? It's just been weighing on me. And so I knew it was wrong, but I apologized, but I finally came forward. But here's where it gets worse. How was it that you knew to grab your phone? her response was, because I knew that when Miss So-and-so grabs the ruler, that's what she's going to do. Now, that means that this has been going on for some time. We also have video footage in the hall of the teacher and both paras going into that classroom and not coming out of that classroom until the end of the period. So there are 3 adult employees in that room. Only one has been arrested so far. But folks, this is serious. You are the advocate of people that can't take care of themselves. These kids don't know about who to report this to. We have to be their voice and make these reports. And if we do, we can't be in trouble. But if we don't, we can be in serious trouble. So we really need to take that into heart. You know, policy GBRA is in our handbook. And if you read any policy of the Caldwell Parish School Board this year, you should read that. Principals, I would copy it and I would hand it out because it is our employee conduct policy. And I'd say 9 out of 10 times when we get a call into our law office about an issue in the school board, we have to pull GBRA. I have a copy of it from Bossier on my desk. Bossier is one of my largest clients. They have so many kids. But all the policies are almost identical. So if I look at Bossier's policy, I'm looking at all of them. This policy tells our employees what's expected of them. It talks about how we treat each other with courtesy and respect. It talks about how we don't post crazy stuff out on the internet, how we don't go in the classroom and share our personal opinions about politics, sex, and life in general. That policy has got everything. It even has a provision there on common sense. It says that, it does, I promise you, I'm not joking. I know that some people think I joke about this stuff, and I do. But if you go read that policy, on the second page, it's a paragraph that says, no policy manual can list each and every type of misconduct that can be covered. And that as professionals, we have to use common sense and life experiences to govern our conduct. I'll give you an example of that. I had a teacher in elementary school, had all the little kids lined up. She was the mama duck, and they were right behind her. They go into a music class, and the teacher is urinating in the trash can. The male teacher has it out, is urinating in the trash can. And when he gets a lawyer, the lawyer says, can you show me the policy that says he can't do it? They walk amongst us. And I said, yes, I can. Yes, I can. It's policy GBRA. And I read him that paragraph. He says, well, he has a medical condition and he can't make it to the bathroom. Well, he won't have a problem anymore. If he wants to sit on his commode at home, he can do it, but he ain't coming back to school. But there cannot be a policy for everything, and GBRA covers that. So I really suggest that one to you. You can't change grades. If you're a teacher, if you make a mathematical error, you need to fix that. If you're a teacher and you look and you realize that you did not give the requisite number of grading opportunities for a 6 or 9 week grading period, you can fix that. But you can't allow a coach to tell you, hey, Johnny, we need him Friday night. He's not going to be eligible if you don't change that grade. That can land us all in trouble. So I want us to know that grades simply cannot be changed like that. And there's a law on that, and it has been used in the past. What about your facilities? For those of you that are elementary principals, I hope you personally, or that you've had your assistant or your maintenance guy, check all the S-hooks on the swings. Those things can wear and they can actually break and hurt a child. Check your slides to make sure your steps are secure. But most importantly, or more frequently, we hear complaints about the landing materials. You know, you're supposed to have so many inches of rubber chips or pellets, or so many inches of wood chips under the landing areas. And so we need to check that, because that is a very frequent occurrence, and there's no defense when you do not have a maintenance schedule to check those. At the high school age, We know we're blessed with having one high school here, so it's very easy for our athletic directors and coaches to check those helmets. We know that helmets have to be recertified every so often. Stuff like this. We can't give you a list of everything, but fire extinguishers, the defibrillators. I mean, imagine if we had someone that was suffering a cardiac issue, we pulled our defibrillator down and went, you know. So all of these things we need to check, make sure that nothing has expired, make sure that everything's been inspected. That's just part of the game that we have to go through, part of the steps. Got another one here. I cannot exercise, I cannot discipline children by extreme physical exercise. Up until 2 years ago, I didn't fathom that this would be a problem. And then I got a video from a superintendent where a teacher who was a former Marine but had gone back to the Alt Cert program, and he was now a teacher. When the kids would talk excessively, he would make them all slide their desks to the wall and then get down on the floor in a push-up position, and they get up on their fingers and go down and hold it. And you could see the little kid's arms start shaking, and then they'd fall. And he'd say, back up on your arms, back up. And he would do that for elementary kids. And that's the way he was disciplined. I also had a PE teacher that took the kids out in August or September and that were misbehaving and made them run around the perimeter of the entire gym, not just inside the court, but out around the perimeter. One kid kept saying, Miss So-and-so, my sides hurt. Hey, you're out of shape, fat butt. Keep running. The kid's appendix had ruptured. So, if you look at that policy manual and you pull the policy on discipline, I promise you, you will not see push-ups, you will not see sit-ups, and you will not see running laps around a building as acceptable discipline. You can only discipline a child in accordance with the policies of the board. And just because you've been a 20-year teacher in LaSalle and you come over to Caldwell doesn't mean you know how to discipline. Because there's a school district within 60 miles of here where you have to weigh the kid before you whip him if you use corporal punishment. That's the thing on corporal punishment. It is not allowed and it's not permissible in every parish. It is up to each individual parish, and those parishes that do allow it have strict requirements as far as who does it, where they do it, the witnesses, the forms, all of that. So please be careful when you're disciplining kids. I had one a couple years ago where they were paddling a kid, and all of a sudden the kid just, instinctively, the kid puts his hand back there. And when he did, the principal hit the boy on his elbow and broke his arm. So just be careful with that, with the corporal punishment. Let's talk a little bit about supervision of students. Getting to school early is a pain. I like to say life happens. We've all heard the S happens. Life happens. You'll have a flat. You'll have a kid that doesn't want to wear that outfit. You'll have a kid that throws a temper fit. You'll have breakfast to fix. Life happens. We all have problems. But the importance of getting to school on time cannot be understated. If you, as a teacher that has supervision duties, do not get there on time, bad things happen. Kids go unsupervised, or your fellow teachers are burdened by having to pick up your slack because you're not being there. And so you must get to your post on time. Because in Louisiana, if a child is not supervised and is injured, it's just a matter generally of how much. We've had cases where a teacher would have someone knock on her door, she would step out into the hall and they would be talking, what are y'all doing for dinner tonight? I don't know, you cooking or y'all going down to the barn? What are y'all doing? And in the meantime, a kid throws a pencil in the room. The door's open, but a kid throws a pencil and hits another one in the eye. Now, what if the teacher had been in that classroom and the pencil had been thrown? How could she have stopped? I mean, you can't outrun that pencil as a teacher. But what the court said in that case was the teacher stepped outside of the classroom and left the kids unattended in there. And had the teacher been in the classroom, there's a substantial likelihood that out of respect for the authority figure, the pencil never would have been thrown. That's bull, I think. But I know that it meant that the school board had to pay a sizable check for the loss of that eye. So you must not leave your kids unattended. And let me point this out. Supervision is not presence alone. You may say, but the teacher was there. They could see her through the door. Our courts have said that supervision requires two things: presence plus engagement. So you merely being on campus or being on your duty post is not all that comprises supervision. You must be engaged. Let me tell you this story. This summer I went down and looked at a video of a playground accident south of here. And there's a camera on the side of the building that films the whole playground. You see two male teachers, both coaches. They've got it may have been a Friday, they had their athletic gear on. And they're sitting there talking to each other, facing the camera. High quality, high definition, man, it was great camera. You could see them talking. If you look over their shoulder about 25 yards beyond them, you see a swing set and a slide. One particular young girl was going up to the top of the slide and jumping for the swing set, trying to grab a hold. First time she fell and got back up, climbed back up. The second time she fell, she got back up, climbed back up. The third time she fell. On the fifth time, she fell and broke her large bone on the finger, broke that bone. We've got a lawsuit, and we found two things. Number one, they hadn't replaced the chips. The chips were basically non-existent on the landing area there. The second thing we found out is that we had a total absence of supervision. We had the presence, but we had zero engagement. A teacher who would have been doing their job would have said, hey, Sarah, stop that. You cannot do that. You'll get hurt. You either slide down the slide or swing on the swing, but you can't jump like that. I mean, that's someone leaving their common sense and their umbrella at home. So, as an administrator, when you look out on the playground, and I'm talking about elementary now primarily, when you look out on the playground and you see two teachers together, you have to wonder, that's generally right there enough to say there's not enough supervision. If you got a large playground, those people ought to be dispersed and watching. There's a particular school in Monroe that's near my home. When I drive by, I see the teachers are wearing Hunter's orange, those bright orange vests, so that the kids can see them, and so the principal can immediately tell I've got people out on the playground. So supervision is very important. It's one of the things that costs district the loss of the most money statewide on an annual basis. So please be cognizant of that. Let's talk briefly about a PE setting, because that is a biggie. Sometimes when you're a PE teacher, you'll have kids in the gym and you'll have kids in the dressing room. And there's a case on that came out of the Supreme Court. And what that case said is that you should position yourself near the dressing room door if it allows you to view the gym. So you're sitting there listening in on this room, occasionally peeking in through the door, and you're also watching the kids in the gym. And so you shouldn't be just over in the bleachers with those kids and ignoring the dressing room. You shouldn't be in the dressing room ignoring the kids that have already dressed out. So you can position yourself in a position where you can keep an active ear and active eyes on the deal. The other option would be to stay in the locker room until everyone's dressed, and then you all go out together. You get the gist of what I'm saying. You have to come up with some method that allows you to supervise as many kids as you can. Let's see here. Let me talk for a second about financial records. Principals, you're supposed to reconcile your bank statements every month, and you're supposed to sign the bank statement as proof that you've done that. Now, I didn't just wake up yesterday. I know that you delegate a lot of that to your school secretaries and your accountants there. But you can delegate the work, but you cannot delegate the responsibility. Even though someone else does that work for you, you're still the captain of the ship, and you still bear responsibility. So please check that work. Teachers, you know that there's always a fundraiser going on. There's always money coming to you. don't keep that money. That money needs to do one of those touch and goes. It needs to hit your office, you need to account for it or record the amount, but you need to get it on to the office as soon as possible. That same thing applies to like our coaches that are having students purchase uniforms, FFA, FBLA, any other group that has anything to do with money. I have heard so many stories. I've heard, well, Mr. Geis, I couldn't make my deposit, so I took it home and put it in my gun safe. Or I took it home and put it in my husband's gun safe. I don't know how this works. I'm not a scientist. But I know that money that does not get deposited daily grows feet and walks off. We had a principal last year that called us and said that one of his teachers had received X amount of product, but it only turned in X amount of dollars, and the candy wasn't there. And so the HR director went in and visited with her, and she said, oh yeah, I got that money at home, I'll go get it and be right back. Well, someone followed her, she went straight to the ATM machine, took out the cash, and brought it back. So, finances will get you in trouble. Receipt the money that you receive when you're required to. Deposit money daily. Do not let money stay in your presence. Don't put your money in your desk drawer. You wouldn't put your money in there. Don't put the kids or the parents' money in there either, because it will get you in trouble. I jokingly say all the time, and I mean it, actually. Romance and finance will get your butt in trouble faster than anything. Okay? Romance and finance. I haven't talked about romance yet, but it goes without saying that we cannot have relationships with our students. Many teachers say, well, he's 19 or she's 20. The law says 21 is the cutoff. So even if you had a consensual relationship with 18, 19, or 20, or 20 and a half year old, you're still in violation of law and will be arrested. So you shouldn't be texting with students. There is a policy on electronic communications that says that there will be no text messaging between students and teachers or employees unless you have the express written permission of the principal. Quite candidly, there are apps now like GroupMe and other things that allow coaches to talk to everybody, including the parents, instantaneously, so there's no need for an individualized text message. When I see a text message between a student and a teacher and it starts out like, you look good today, it was nice seeing you in class today, that type of stuff, I know that it's not, something's up, okay? All right, so that's the situation there. Principals, I want to urge you again this year to treat everyone equally and fairly when it comes to the imposition of the rules of campus. We see a lot of well-intended principals get in trouble, particularly in the early part of their tenure as a principal, because they get accused of treating one group more favorably than the other. And if you don't believe there are little cliques at school, you're fooling yourself. We all know that's the case. But the secret is to nip that in the bud, to try to treat everyone equally, and set the same expectations for those people as well. Contracts. Many times copy machine salesmen will come. If you're a food service worker, different vendors will come wanting to sell you mats and rags and all types of different utensils. Regardless of the position you hold in the parish, do not sign a contract without getting permission from someone at the central office. Because the law in Louisiana says that if a person signs a contract without authority and without authorization, they are personally liable for paying that contract. And we all know that if you have gone as far to sign the contract, it's probably something that was needed. As a principal, you probably need a new copy machine. As a food service worker, you probably need the mats or the other products that people are trying to sell you. We're not telling you you can't have it. What we're telling you is you need to go through the central office for two reasons. Number one, we need to make sure that the money is there and is properly budgeted. But the second thing we need to do is we need to look at that contract, because when you flip it over and you see that 6 or 8 point font, you know nothing's good in there. If they try to hide it with that little bitty font, it's something wrong there. It will probably say that this law is governed by the laws of the state of Michigan, and any lawsuit relative to any problems with this contract shall be resolved in Michigan. We don't want to sign agreements like that. State law in Louisiana says we can object to that. And these companies know that, but statistically no one ever says anything, they just sign. So we need to check these things out before we sign those contracts. So that's why we're asking you to please get permission on that. All right, the next one. I cannot allow students to operate machinery. Can you believe that in 2021 we still have people that'll put the kid on a Z-turn mower and let them mow? Or we'll have principals or teachers on duty and they'll tell a kid, hey, run down to Sonic for me, pick me up a Route 44. Get you one for you too, okay? You are sending that child on a mission on behalf of the school in the eyes of the law. And if they have an accident, we've all got a problem. So don't put kids in the kitchen cooking. Don't put kids in maintenance department moving Coke machines or candy machines. I can't tell you how many toes have been broken when those things fall on a kid's toe. We have employees that move stuff. Don't use your kids. Heaven forbid one of them hurt their back or something like that. There is a law in Louisiana that says minors shall not operate dangerous machinery. And so we have to be careful. Likewise, if we know we have some type of equipment that's broken, we don't let kids around it. We had a football and basketball team that shared a washing machine and dryer, and the washing machine was broken. When you would lift the door, that agitator would still spin. And you know, at home, some of your doors won't open. Others, if you open the door, it automatically kills the agitator. But in this case, it was broken. And this kid had put the clothes in the washer at first period, and in between his next class, he was going to take them out of the washer and put them in the dryer. So he gets there, and he notices that they're just finishing washing. He opens the lid, and that agitator's still going. So he hops up on the dryer and uses his tennis shoe to put it down on top of that agitator to stop it. His foot slips in there, and it down near twists his leg off. And so the school board is liable for all of that. The court did not use the lack of supervision because, you know, we're dealing with a high school student. He safely washed loads of clothes before, loads of clothes. But where they got the school board was that they knowingly and intentionally allowed a dangerous piece of equipment to remain on campus, and they allowed the kid to use it. So the school board had to pay that sizable medical bill and his damages. Let me talk to you a little bit about two other things. Fundraising. I know Mr. Sonia had another obligation, and he did not put me up to this, but I wanted him to hear what I was going to tell you. You know, we never get enough money to operate our schools. You know, I want to tell you that I've been working with this district for many years, and every superintendent that's been in that chair has been mindful of the fact that we try to give you some checks, and we try to do that. We know that you're underpaid. As a whole profession statewide, we're underpaid. But we also, we know we can't compete with the Monroes and the Bossiers of the world because their tax base is so large. We have to ask our parents for help. And so when I tell you 15 minutes ago how we need to protect money and not lose money and not let money be stolen, it's because if the public realizes that we're not taking care of the money they give us, they're not going to be as inclined to renew taxes or to give us money in the future. Now, I want to talk to you about fundraising. I've never been a principal, and I don't profess to know anything about what you do. But if I were a principal, I would have a fundraising calendar in my office, and I would meet with all of my people that are going to be having fundraisers. And we would try to space that out throughout the year so that everybody is not hitting on our parents at the same time. I, as a parent, have been sitting in my house and kids knock on the door. You know, can you buy this? Can you buy a baseball hat? Can you buy some candy? Can you buy Christmas wreaths? And it's all at the same time. And I think we would probably have happier parents, and we would probably raise more money if we could somehow come up with a plan. And I know there's going to be overlap because some of the seasons and some of the activities overlap. But to the greatest extent that we could spread them out or have some planning on that, I believe it would be appreciated by the parents, and it would probably make us more effective on fundraising. But that's not a legal issue, that's just an observation. The legal issue is, once you get that money, make sure 100% of it gets deposited. Facility usage. Please don't allow people to slip in and use the gym, or slip in and use your auditorium if you have one of those. Or, you know, we have facility use policies, and they require certain types of payments or deposits and things. So when it comes to the use of your cafeteria, your auditoriums, your gymnasiums, just be very careful in how you allow the public to use those. We're not saying no. We realize that we have to work with our communities, but what we are saying is they need to go through the proper channels and the proper process. A problem is never a problem until it becomes a problem. So you can allow people to use your cafeteria 50 times, and it'll never be a problem. But on the 51st time, when someone trips outside over one of the, I'm giving you a real case, you know those concrete things that stops your tires when you're parking? We've had cases at night where people trip over those while they're having a family reunion in the cafeteria, and we get a lawsuit because there wasn't adequate lighting outside for them to have seen the deal, or a light bulb was out. And so anytime you allow the members of the public to use your facilities, your risks go up, and your insurance company cringes. So we have to be very careful with that. I was in Sabine Parish last week and given a presentation like this, and the fire marshal went before me. And the fire marshal is usually a pain in our butt. But this guy had great common sense. He brought it with him, and he was intelligent and a great presenter. And he said, look folks, we had an exemption last year, but we've got to do all our emergency drills this year, and you got to document them. But he said, while I'm here, I want to talk to you about what we're going to be looking for when we come back. He says, we have a statewide directive. We're going to be looking to see that your fire exits are clearly marked, that they're open, and that the hallway immediately around them isn't congested with boxes or equipment. And you can't use the exit door area as a storage room. All right? So that was the deal. He says, we're going to look in the rooms. We're going to see if there's any flammable materials that are just all over the room. He said, some teachers just go overboard with paper mache and all types of stuff, and there reaches a point where it's a fire hazard and we'll say something. The other thing he says, those drop-down sprinklers that are in some places, he said they, at Christmas in particular, they'll hang the garland loop to loop on the sprinkler heads. He said that's a no-no. But he said the most common infraction is the extension cord. He says an extension cord is a temporary thing. And the example he used is, let's say you were having a reward day for the kids, you would use an extension cord to blow up the jumping, or you would use the extension cord to run the camera that you're using to record something. But he recommended the use of power strips, but he pointed out that you cannot plug a power strip into a power strip. You can only use one power strip. But I had a little fun with him after it was done. I said, sir, I'm from Catahoula Parish in rural Louisiana. We know that fire marshals' initials are FM, but we invert them sometimes. And he saw the humor in that. But anyway, That's what they're looking for as far as the fire marshal this year. I want to talk to you a little bit about new discipline. The legislature changed several laws this year, and one of the biggest changes they made was in the area of discipline. And so I'm going to give you the 30,000-foot view on that, and then we'll wrap this up. If you have been in education for the last 20 or 25 years, you have seen a tremendous change in discipline. Many of us in this room, if you were suspended, you would go home. If you were expelled, you went home for the rest of the year. But you have seen a gradual move toward eliminating that. We no longer are able to remove kids from the school setting. We have to provide them with an alternative form of education, either through an alternative school or something of that sort. If you look hard and try to say, I can see a silver lining in the COVID crisis, it has been the increases in technology and our ability to deliver instruction to kids that are perhaps, not in school through the virtual program. But under this new law, they continue in saying that you can't remove kids. In fact, the Department of Education is working on they have to approve your alternative plans. Some districts are telling me that you can't even send kids home for 5 days, and there's some cutoff that they're putting on there. Most districts are just considering a longer removal to get around that situation that the Department of Education is putting on them. So what I'm telling you is I don't know the specifics, but please don't be frustrated with your hearing officers or your central office if they tell you as principals, well, we can't remove the kid because it's some of these new funky rules and regulations that the department is putting out. But back to that change in the law. They're telling us that we have to be more flexible and more accommodating of parents. If we have a required or mandatory parent meeting on a discipline issue, we're supposed to work around the parent's work schedule, and we are to allow the use of virtual meetings with the parent, whether that's FaceTime or Skype or Zoom. That has been placed into the new law. Some of the communication with parents that we used to have to do by certified mail and letter, they will allow us now to do that by email. So as your parents register their kids, it's important to get a good email address there as well. The new law also says that for minor infractions, you have to show that you have employed some type of progressive discipline. So when you principals come before your hearing officer this year, I would imagine one of the new questions that the hearing officer is going to say, has he been in trouble before? Has she been in trouble before? What other forms of discipline have been utilized prior to this today? So that new question will be asked. But also, the State Department of Education will be accumulating all information on suspensions and expulsions. And they will be publishing it on their website, broken down by school. And so parents will be able, and the public will be able, and the news media will be able to look at your particular school and to see who is being disciplined for what and how frequently at each of your schools. So they call that transparency. But nonetheless, that is something that's going to happen. The legislature also in the new laws added more training for y'all. Just a more list of trainings that have to be done. I don't know when they expect you to have time to get all that done, but they do. All right, I've got a quote by Vince Lombardi. For you, those of you that have pulled this up, it explains a lot to me. I played football, and our coach was a guy, an older gentleman named Raymond Peace. He would make us run each play sometimes 20 or 30 times, even though we thought it was perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. There's only been one perfect person, and we all know who that was. But if we try to be perfect, and we keep practicing, and we keep doing it, and we keep teaching, then we won't be perfect, but maybe we'll be excellent. That's what we're striving for. I want to tell you again, every single one of you is just as important to the other as it relates to the success of this district. It's going to be a tough year this year. We appreciate your patience and courtesy, and I wish y'all nothing but the best. Thank y'all so much.
Thank Mr. Guys for coming and making sure that we are not wearing orange anytime soon. So we are a little ahead of schedule, so let's go ahead and take about a 15-minute break, and then we will come back and do our employee recognitions, and then we will be at our schools for the afternoon.
Start off.
this last part.
I had to come take this medicine. I knew
I tried to check it on the service here. So thank you.
All right, so we have done a lot of, if you think back to last year, we did several surveys and we've done a lot to try to kind of get the pulse for our teachers and employees and our students and our parents, and we've gone through a district strategic planning to really look at what are we doing well and where can we work, where can we improve. And I know that that's kind of the mantra in our classrooms is you're looking for ways that you excel and ways that you can always improve. And part of that is because of COVID, we had to do those surveys to check the well-being of our people. But I love that kind of stuff because it lets me know what our people actually think. And one of the areas that we decided as a district that we need to work on is the value of our employees. And I hope that throughout this past year and throughout this back to school professional development that it is evident that we want you, we want our students, we want our families to love being a part of Caldwell Parish School District. And so one of the ways that we thought would be wonderful to recognize those who are loyal to our school district, because that's what we want. We want you to want to work here and not ever leave and keep contributing to our community. But one of the ways that we thought we could recognize people was for those who were loyal to our school district. So I had our business department run some reports for me, and I know that there will be people that are missed because you didn't fall into the right number, and I wish I could go back and get everybody. But one of the things we wanted to do was recognize those pivotal years, like 10 years of service to Caldwell Parish School District, and then 15 and 20 and so on. So at this point, I'm going to call the names of the people who fall into those categories, and we have a certificate for you and a cool pin with our new logo on it that you can wear on your suit or you can wear on your bag, however, and it's small, but I want you to know how much we value you and your commitment to our district. So at this time I really wanted a big group picture, but we're going to forego that. So at this time, when I call your name, please come, and Ms. Kim Adams is going to give you your certificate. So 10 years of service to Caldwell Parish School District. We want to recognize Ms. Chelsea Duell. All right, our next employee with 10 years is Ms. Heather Darden. Miss Dana Harveston. Miss Carla Jacobson. She had to go to a LASBO meeting, so I'll make sure she gets that. Miss Cynthia Jordan. Miss Deborah Maxwell. Miss Heather Marino. Miss Cindy Platt. Miss Brittany Rushing. Miss Dottie Shaw. And Mr. Paul Shaw. Mr. Terry Simmons. Miss Laura Waldron. And now moving on to the employees with 15 years of service in Caldwell Parish, Miss Dallas Abrams. Mr. George Duncan. Mr. Jeff Farr. Miss Rita Harper. Come on down. Miss Carolyn Hefner. Miss Mary Hunter. It just happens to be the first person I ever hired. My first year as principal at Union Central. Miss Candy Johnson. Miss Merritt Smith. And now for the employees with 20 years of service to Caldwell Parish School System, Miss Kathy Dunn. Miss Janice Martinez. Miss Karen Price. Miss Doreen Ray. Miss Linda Tarver. And Miss Paula Wilson. And now for 25 years of service in Caldwell Parish, Mr. Ellery Brown. Miss Penny Buckaloo. Miss Portia Castles. Miss Janae Clark. Miss Monica Coates. Miss Lori Flores. Miss Abby Thompson. Come on, Coach Abby. I told you not to leave.
She's looking the other way.
She's going farther back.
Miss Paula Thompson. Oh, she went to their mask. And now for 30 years of service to Caldwell Parish School System, Miss Cynthia Esters. Miss Teresa Ferguson. Better known as Miss Coco. Miss Betty Prudhomme. Miss Rhonda Whitten. And 35 years of continued service in Caldwell Parish School System, Miss Marilyn Ratcliffe. And for 45 years of continued service, unfortunately she's not here today because she's with her husband at the VA hospital in Shreveport, but Miss Mary Wiley. So if you think that I messed up, you can certainly call me out on it. But I did my best to try to figure out those years that either you finished up in May or were hired like in the August period. But our plan is to make this a continued tradition, and so if I didn't hit you this time, that just means stay a little longer and I'll get you next time. That's the intention. So, but more than anything, we just want you to know how much we appreciate your loyalty and your service to the students of Caldwell Parish School District. Like Mr. Guy said, it's going to be a tough year, but we made it through last year, and we're still smiling, and we're still moving. I go back to the analogy that Mr. Massel gave me. We're in a marathon. Do not lose sight of why you're here and what we're here. We can still make school amazing. How many of you loved Dave Burgess on Friday? Wasn't he amazing? I felt like not only did he bring the entertainment value and the energy, but I feel like we've left with some ideas that we can go right into our classrooms and start making school amazing for our kids. Don't let the little rock in our shoe of COVID distract you from the real purpose that you're here for, and that's to make this school system the best it can be, to love these students and to teach these students, and just to be the very best version of ourselves that we can. It is 10:30, so we're way ahead of schedule. I recommend that you get with your principals so that they know what to do during this time period. I don't have a schedule for me. Okay, so everybody everybody else's lunch until your afternoon session starts. Count this as a little free time, maybe get in your classroom, play with those being cue boards. And get ready for your students who come tomorrow. We're so excited. Thank y'all and have a great year.